Individuals have 3 to 4 minutes to comment. The county board will not engage in dialogue with the speakers, but rather refer the matter to the appropriate county department. A citizen may speak at the public access forum only once per month. Is there anyone here today that would like to speak at the public access forum? Anyone here wishing to speak? One last time, anyone wishing to speak? Seeing no one. Our next item is the consent agenda. There is 10 items plus the addition of the minutes from the special meeting October 4th. Any comments? Anyone have questions? Anything anybody wants pulled? Otherwise, a motion to accept the consent agenda items would be in order.
So moved.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Mergen. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Our next regular agenda item is administration. Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 2 items under administration. Well, this microphone's acting up for me. 2 items under. Can you hear me? 2 items under. I got 2 items under the administration. One is we're proposing some changes to the 2023 proposed budget that we'll be talking about, and then the second one is to talk about our legislative priorities for the upcoming year. And so the first one is a number of budget adjustments to the upcoming 2023 budget, and it's in a number of areas as outlined in the board packet, but I'll just run through them quickly. In the parks area, we were awarded 2 grants, one for Quarry Park and one for Kramer Lake. And so we're suggesting that the match for those projects come predominantly out of the Parks Fund. Parks has adequate reserves to handle the match for these grants, and the match required is about $400,000, and the grants are over $1.3 million. The second one is a contribution from our ARPA funds into our health insurance fund. We can replenish costs that were COVID related and shore up our health insurance fund, which it needs. In addition to that, we are suggesting that we use over $400,000 in ARP funds to make up for a loss in our state aid for maintenance to roads. And so that makes the ARPA use of about $1.4 million. We're also suggesting that we use Human Services Fund balance to make up for the cost overruns on the Central Minnesota Mental Health building that was predominantly built with grant dollars. And then we have enough savings through the vacancies in our budget, employee vacancies, that we're suggesting that we eliminate the fee for employees to park downtown and fund, at least for the partial year of 2023, the part-time employees that were recommended in the study on the Veteran Service Office. And then lastly, from the general fund, which really is leftover CARES dollars, an amount of $450,000 to purchase a mobile command center for the sheriff's office. And so those are outlined in your packet. We have representatives that can speak to all of these in more detail than me if necessary, but they will not change the levy that's being proposed in the 2023 proposed budget.
Okay, any questions from board members? I just have one on the Central Minnesota Mental Health Facility. Again, and maybe if Melissa is here, she can answer this, or Mike, maybe, how is that? So they do we own the facility and then lease it to them? Is that how that one went?
Yeah, we built, and so we own the facility, and then we have a long-term lease with them. It's for nothing, for $1.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So we were the recipient of the grant.
Yep.
Built the building and owned the building, but they're obligated to do the operational costs.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions on any of the items Mike brought up? If not, I believe we would need a motion to approve those adjustments, correct? Okay, so be looking for said motion.
I'll move those items.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Persky. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Commissioner Mergen. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you. The second item under administration is to consider our legislative priorities for the coming year. Originally, I was hoping that we would be able to meet with our legislators on December 13th and after our regular board meeting, but there is a conflict there. I think all that we have invited were already committed to attend another meeting, and I think that's with the police chiefs, mostly from Sturgeon County and maybe their surrounding area. I don't know all the details of that, but I'm hearing there's that conflict. So we don't have a date yet, and maybe we can talk about some dates that might work for you. The priority list there is, as you can see, it's almost exactly the same as last year with the addition of a few. And the only subtraction of one was the sharing of information that we requested. And even that, I don't think we think was fully taken care of, but at least there was legislation passed that may be helpful in that area. And so we did remove that one. I would just say in general that this list is kind of long. We usually don't like them to be this long, and maybe, of course, that is in part because not much got done the last session. So there might be a way that, either we could eliminate some of these, or maybe we regroup them somehow. But the first thing is to make sure that you're comfortable with at least what you have here in front of you, and then how we want to reshape that. We could actually probably have time. I could bring that back to you at the next meeting too, if at least I get a feel for if the board's comfortable with, or what the board is comfortable with.
So 15, 16, 17 would be add-ons, new items.
The 15 is, of course, what we talked about this afternoon. That was to allow a local option sales tax for the new jail justice center. And in addition, ask for that change in the law so that we could have a referendum not only in general election years, but and that change was in the tax bill. You'd have to have it in November, but it wouldn't have to be in 2024. You could do it in 23. And as you know, we would have to get this before the legislator, at least the tax chairs, in January. And of course, we need the support of our delegation too to make it happen. And then the second one is really, we operate when we do expenditures under what's called the public purpose doctrine. It's a section of the law, and that is very limiting on items that we can do for recruitment and retention, such as, retirement party is a bad example because that's not really retention, but small expenditures for employees. So, a summer event or something like that, we're unable to do things like that. And in this day and age, we want to try to do everything we can to recruit and retain employees. So that's one new idea that we brought forward. And then the other one is changes to the elections. I'll let Randy handle that. And then the new number 4 is funding support for foster care and kinship program, which is really the amount that we're able to pay those people that are doing those functions.
Yeah, so just on number 16 a little bit, if that's one you want to support but maybe pass on to AMC, that might be appropriate. So it affects not only Stearns County and other counties, but that's also affecting, city, the school district, township, everybody. And we've looked at different policies from different organizations, and it's the Wild West out there, right? So some are doing things they probably shouldn't be doing. There's a lot of gray area. So that being said, I don't know that Stearns County needs to carry the water on that, but I think it is a good one for AMC to work with the other organizations and come up with something on that. And In 17, those are some more administrative items to the election law that would help keep costs down and make things a little smoother. That being said, those also will be supported by other associations out there. We can do them or not do them. I guess that's up to you.
Okay. Any questions, comments? Commissioner Clark?
Go ahead.
Commissioner Morgan?
I was just going to say, this kind of goes along with what's coming up with environmental services later. Maybe we could add this kind of under the general issues thing to try and get a change on that committee appointments issue that we've got coming up later on. If that could be changed down at the state, for instance. Right now, we have 2 cities, townships that don't exist anymore. St. Augusta for one, and Rockville. And there are large farms out there in those incorporated cities, and now those aren't counted as unincorporated assignments. So that would be something I think would be an easy change down at the legislature we could ask for.
Maybe we can discuss that. I think that's part of the public hearing issue on our committee. Is it on our committees? Or no?
Public hearing?
After a while, when we get to environmental services.
Yeah, but I think it's one thing that they should be aware of, that those types of things exist.
Mm-hmm. Commissioner Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dr. Williams and I got a chance to talk a little bit about this. I mean, clearly when we pass something, it may not be shown in this specific format to legislators because it is a pretty long and dense list. In addition to what might not be on here, I mean, what's on here is what isn't, which is we support the AMC priorities and the MICA priorities. And so we may be wanting to refer. So, for example, when I was looking at this list, the SCORE funding isn't on here, but we know that's going to come up somewhere else. So if we are approving this, that again doesn't mean this will be this specifically the way it's shown when we're discussing it with others, but it would give us an opportunity to be somewhat comprehensive.
Yeah, just, Mr. Chair, in response to that, we do say that in like the cover sheet of what we've done the last few years, and we say in conjunction or, in connection with those priorities. That's all we say. So we could beef that part up a little bit and just make that more apparent than we have in the past. We really haven't done that in the past. We haven't, and because of that, we haven't talked to our legislators about it either.
Mr. Chair, Dr. Williams, I have no trouble with the length of, or the number here because we don't know what's going to be addressed and what's not going to be addressed. And all of these things I believe are worth mentioning because they may get some traction. Just the idea of mentioning 94 and 23. They've heard that every year since I've been on the board. And so they just know that it's something that we want to continue. So it's not something that it's a top priority for us, but it's always been a priority to some extent to always get it done, and we haven't forgotten it. So I'm okay with just leaving everything we've got on there.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, my point just was that if we do that, which is fine, we can also break this up a little bit if we're talking to the Human Services Committee or if we're talking to Transportation. We've got some ways of doing it where people's eyes might not glaze
Right.
since there's no white space. So I'm confident we'll get that worked out. I think this is a good list in conjunction with those other things that might not be listed here.
Right, because each one of us is on a separate committee.
Right.
So we kind of push whichever ones are on our committees. So.
Mr. Chair, do we need to approve this then, knowing that it might show up in a different format or a different wordsmiths? Because if that's the case, I'll move approval.
Okay. Thank you, Commissioner Clark.
Well, are we okay with adding something, changing that formula for committee assignments?
I'm not sure I understand it.
Is that a state requirement?
It is, no? Then where did that come from, Shelley?
I don't know what the issue is.
I thought last board meeting you were saying that was a state requirement.
Two members of unincorporated areas.
Right.
Oh, okay. So,
on the
Mr.
planning
Chair and Commissioner Morgan, so the question is that local jurisdictions decide who's on it or something like that, or
Well,
is that what you're asking
The
for?
issue is really there are some townships that are totally incorporated now.
Oh, so clean up
Yeah,
clean up the.
because Rockville and St. Augusta
Okay,
have large farms in them.
right.
And their whole thing is considered incorporated.
So nobody in that area could be a representative of
Absolutely.
unincorporated?
Yep, yep.
No, but they could be on the incorporated side. So they still could be
True.
included. They
Right.
definitely could be included, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So do we have a second to that motion from Commissioner Clark?
Second.
To include that, or?
Well, no.
No, we'll get to that later.
Okay.
Okay, and we have a second from Commissioner Persky. Further discussion? Any further discussion? If not, all those in favor of approving the 2023 legislative priorities signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next up, Randy with a public hearing.
So part of your vacation short-term rental discussion was some changes in fees, and I have Sarah and Shelley here to go over that.
I don't know, I've got a different view here.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Sarah Uch, Finance Director, and Shelley Benson, Environmental Services Director. Just a couple items before we open the public hearing. I'd just like to kind of remind you where we've been. The County Board did modify the vacation short-term rental standards as Ordinance 640 recently in October at the meeting. And as you recall, we've done a fee study of other fees, of all countywide fees back in July. And so this public hearing is just over the fees relating to the vacation short-term rental. I have all the changes, up here on one slide, but it's showing you on the left-hand side what is the current fee and then what it will become. And so each of these are becoming more of a, I don't know if you call it ladder or a tiered approach, where the first time that you get these permits, you'll pay one fee. And then if you go on without violation, each renewal, you will get $100 knocked off that fee. If you do have a violation and you're able to reapply at the beginning tier again, so therefore not getting that reduction in the fee. I don't know if I said that correctly.
You got it.
Okay. That was a little bit confusing. I know we did have one public comment just stating that. I think that came to all of you to read just to clarify that, because that's a little unclear on the way this is presented.
Okay.
And so with that, I'll public hearing today and then asking you to do an approval of the proposed fee changes.
Okay. With that, nothing from the commissioners at this time. I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on this item? Please come forward, state your name and address. Again, is there anyone here wishing to speak on this public hearing related to the fees for short-term vacation rentals? One last time. Anyone here wishing to speak? Seeing no one, we'll close the public hearing and look for what are the wishes of the board. You want to approve or deny the proposed changes?
I believe there's also a resolution in front of you.
Can they be one
Chair.
motion or should we do two?
I think you can do one more.
Okay. All right, then the resolution would go with that, and this would be effective January 1st, 2023. Okay, so I'd be looking for a motion to either approve or deny the fee schedule proposed.
I'll move it.
Thank you, Commissioner Lenzmeyer. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Clark. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Next up is Environmental Services.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Shelley Benson, Environmental Services Director. Today we have the item that was carried over from the last agenda related to potential appointments to boards and committees. And if there was any intention of a change in process. Since we did redistricting, I thought it was a good time to take a look at it, have the conversation, and be clear about there's an opportunity for you as a board to make some changes to the way you do appointments. Looking at the land use committees, the Board of Adjustment and Planning Commission Those are the areas of concern. I wouldn't even say concern. Those are the areas that are most often looked at. So we gave you 3 options. Amend the district boundaries and don't use district boundaries. Essentially, just do everybody at large. Amend the district boundaries to have new regions, which would cross over and have more than one commissioner district, or third, leave as is. Any of those are options. The Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment have statutory minimums. The minimum number of members is 5. The maximum number of members is 11. The Planning Commission must have 2 members in the unincorporated areas, and the Board of Adjustment must have a Planning Commission member on it. We rotate it, but it doesn't have to be rotated, but just by ordinance, we do rotate that member to the Board of Adjustment. So Board of Adjustment currently is 7 members. 1 is a Planning Commission, 5 districts, and 1 at large. And the Planning Commission is 5 each district and 2 at large. So that's what I have in front of you. You guys have had a lot of conversation about it. I think there was a lot of discussion about incorporated and unincorporated areas. The only thing we have to pay attention to is to make sure if we stay with our current process, because every single commissioner has incorporated areas, to make sure that we maintain 2 Planning Commission members, if you stay the same, that are in unincorporated areas. So we have to maintain that, which is what our current split is 5-2. So we have 2 members in unincorporated and the other 5 are in incorporated areas.
You know, this is probably a good review because I never knew that until this came out that you had to have 2.
Right. So it's a good opportunity to take a look at our boards and commissions. And as you guys had mentioned last time, there was a lot of concern about existing memberships and changing of districts. We are able to accommodate that, and I will bring a resolution in December that will state that those that are existing can stay through their term. And then we did happen to find a little error in our Board of Adjustment staggering of appointments of terms. So we will need to correct District 2 and District 3 and have one serve 1-year term and another serve a 2-year term. And then we will be back on the right staggering of terms. So I will bring those back in December, those resolutions. But in front of you today is how would you like to appoint? Either all at large, currently by district and 2 at large, or we'll leave it the same, or some other region. We can do any way you want to. There's no right way or wrong way.
Commissioner Clark?
A couple extra questions I had asked of Shelley, and obviously wouldn't have gotten a chance to ask you all. I mean, one thing we could do is say the at-large needs to, by definition, be from an unincorporated area. The second is, I'm not sure we'd want to do this, but I'm just going to say it out loud. We could also increase the size of it if we wanted to include more at-large to have more assurity. My understanding, and I'm sure Commissioner Lensmark could speak more directly to it, is at one point it was all the way up to 11 people, which seems really large. So I'm not sure even when I think about that, but those are 2 potential considerations too.
Commissioner Mergen?
Oh, I'm not comfortable with option 1 or 2.
Yeah.
Option 1, all at large, I'm not comfortable with that. And then option 2, where it crosses current district lines, I'm not comfortable with that. I think the way it is has been working. We're trying to fix something that's working. The only issue is, like I've mentioned earlier, is the whole township of Rockville and St. Augusta are unincorporated now, and that's a legislative thing, or somehow we need to get straightened out, where we've got somebody that's got a 100-acre farm out in Rockville that's treated the same as somebody in downtown St. Cloud.
Which is a good thing because they could still be on the
Correct.
on the Planning Commission.
Well, they should be considered one of those unincorporated, in my mind.
Mr. Chair, but
Commissioner Persky.
to your point, Jeff, that wouldn't make a difference because we need 2 of them that have to be from the unincorporated area.
At least 2.
Correct.
From the incorporated, like
From incorporated. At least 2 from incorporated, but
No,
Okay.
No.
two from
Two from
unincorporated.
unincorporated. So that would mean that typically from District 4 or District 3 or District 5, any of those appointments would have to be from the rural area and not from the,
Right, but not the rural area of Rockville.
but the person from Rockville could cover either. They could be a rural person or they could be a municipal person, either
No,
one,
they're all municipal.
by name. But by where they live, they would actually, be a rural person. That makes no difference. It'd be up to the,
Not under the statute is what they're saying. It's
no,
like,
no,
sorry.
I agree with you there.
But my issue is, what if we can't find two that are legally from the unincorporated and now somebody with a 100-acre farm out
I
in
see what
Rockville?
you're saying.
What would like to be on there, but gee, they can't. Just because they're
Because the
now
two city
incorporated.
ones are.
But they could fit in from the at-large position. I think we could recruit from District 3 and District 5. I would hope you folks could do that, knowing your districts.
Well, I would hope so too, but I'm just saying that could happen.
Yeah.
Because since Shelley brought it up,
You could. And the whole point was to generate the discussion. Since we were redistricting, I think it was important to have the conversation. You don't have to change anything. There's no requirement to change anything. But I think one of the things you could do, as Commissioner Clark had stated, is that each of you have your district appointments, and then you could have those other two areas, the two at-large positions could be unincorporated. That way you know it will always stay at meeting the statute. Because then anywhere within the district you can appoint and you don't have to worry about incorporated or unincorporated. Or I can just pay attention and watch it as we go.
I would say the way we've been doing it has been working. And yeah, you could keep an eye on it. And if somebody says, I want to appoint this person, but you can say, okay, we can't legally, you have to get somebody else.
We can do that.
That may come up. It hasn't in the past.
Fortunately, yes.
Mr. Chair.
And that's where, if I can just make one cut, the number 2 would, in a way, you'd have, by creating your separate districts or areas, you kind of allow a rural unincorporated area in almost each area then, huh?
A little more flavor of the rural.
Right.
But they're all valuable members, so however you want to choose to do it, it doesn't matter to me. I was just trying to give you opportunity for looking at it, and then it did show up a few things. One, have to pass the additional resolutions, and then make sure we get the staggering right on Board of Adjustment. So we'll have to adjust those either way.
Commissioner Clark.
So, Mr. Chair, Ms. Benson, I believe I'm hearing you restate then that, yes, you all can be taking a look at this, keeping an eye on it, as Commissioner Mergen said, and let us know if we are at risk of not meeting the statute.
Correct.
So that we are making sure we are appointing people to that. If we end up having a problem, then maybe we revisit part of this.
That we can do.
Then I prefer just to keep it the way it is.
Is that a motion?
Is that a motion?
Do we need a motion? though? I think this is just bringing it back for
I guess we
thought.
No, we have to approve one of the 3.
Just,
Or-
yeah.
I suppose a motion would be.
It's just a motion to
Appropriate.
approve, to continue what you were, past appointment practice.
So moved.
Okay, thank you,
second.
Commissioner Clark and Commissioner Mergen. Any further discussion? Lee?
My concern was just that existing members, if they don't qualify for whatever program you adopt, allow the existing members to term out
Yep,
at
I
the
think
end
that's
of
what,
their current term.
Mr. Chair,
'Cause
correct.
You got some people that have learned about the process and are now valuable. So, all right, thanks.
okay, Commissioner Mergen?
Yeah, again, I'd like something at least mentioned to the legislators to address the Rockville and St. Augustus situation. I'm sure that's occurring other places too. It's got to be where they're annexing things as incorporated, but yet they're big farm areas. Then they could qualify either way at large.
And Mr. Chair, if Commissioner Merrick was still here, he'd probably be talking about how much of the first district actually had been unincorporated too. And so I think clearly, certainly in places where there has been growth or for whatever reason, a township wants to become incorporated, that it could be a challenge. So it's probably worth us at least bringing up, whether it's formally on the platform or not. It does make sense to be talking about that.
Okay. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of leaving the appointments to the boards and committees as is, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
So just as a reminder, Commissioner Notch, you have a Board of Adjustment appointment that's needed for District 5 because we have currently Dave Gamrot has termed out.
Yep.
District 4 will have a PC member, and District 2 will have a PC member. So please ask those people to sign up and get in their applications, and we will be able to review those in January. Okay, thank you.
Just the request that I would have is remind District 4 rep that this is coming up. Do they want to do it again?
Yes, I've had that conversation. That member is a member of the Waite Park City Council now.
Yeah, is that okay?
That's a decision you as a board need to make. Do you want another elected official in that capacity? We have had township supervisors, but I don't know how you feel about city elected officials, city council members.
Well, this is bound to come up, so might as well be right off the bat. Well, I don't have a strong opinion on that, but you got someone there with experience, so, I don't have my little heart set on a particular outcome. So where you at?
Yeah, because I mean, I don't know if it would really matter because, I mean, unless they're going to lobby for their city for something, but they're only one vote out of 7, correct?
Yeah, I wouldn't have a strong feeling either way.
Okay. If you can live with it, let's stay with it. All right.
Do we need to address that now? No.
No, that's just a decision when you come to appointments, and I believe
So in January, we'll have.
Steve Hammes will be doing that in
Yeah.
January.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we'll send out information to you prior to that meeting.
Thank you.
Then you'll know who's interested in being reappointed on
All
all
right.
of them, those that have termed out, and so you'll have a full understanding of the appointments that you need to make.
Thank you.
And you should be getting that, I think, pretty soon.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else for Shelley before she turns around again? All
I'm
right,
trying
thanks.
to leave the podium if you can't tell.
Okay. Thanks,
All is
Shelley.
good, thank you.
All right, next up, Public Works. Welcome, Jody.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Jody Tyke, Stearns County Engineer. Of course, Stearns County is obvious, sorry. Before the meeting, I did hand out a bid summary, quote summary. Technically, we received quotes yesterday. The item begins on page 86 in your agenda packets. We solicited quotes for a building removal in farming at the intersection of County Roads 23 and 42, and removal of this building is making way for our reconstruction project we have on County Road 23 between Richmond and Farming scheduled for next year. So this time I come bearing good news on quotes. We did get 5 quotes, and the low quote was Kramer Trucking and Excavating, and I'm sorry, I just see that column cut off. But they were 18.16% under the engineer's estimate with a quote of $36,196. And since this is a standard contract, I'm asking the board to award the contract to Kramer Trucking and Excavating.
Okay, looking for a motion. Is there a motion?
I'll move that.
Thanks, Commissioner
I'll
Murray.
second that with a question.
Thanks,
Do they have any culverts?
No.
No, they don't. Okay.
It'd probably be too small.
Oh.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to award the bid for the building demolition. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
And I have no miscellaneous unless the board has anything for me.
Maybe just an update, Jody. I know I've communicated with you a few times in that 23 project. Do you know when staff is expected to go out and visit with property owners?
So those offer letters either went out today or they'll go out in tomorrow morning's mail. And then they have the breakdown of what we are offering for whether it be trees, temporary easement, permanent easement, et cetera. So those letters, like I said, either this afternoon's mail or tomorrow morning's mail. And then we ask them that they contact us and what the time that's convenient for us to go out and meet with them. So we should be going out there as early as next week, probably.
Okay. All right. Commissioner Lenzelmeyer?
Yeah, you're pretty good about this, but keep an eye peeled for another annual calendar.
I don't know that they're making them. I did recently talk to the person who supplies those calendars. I'll touch base again with him. I'll see him on Thursday.
That'd be great. And if you're going to AMC,
I would bring it with.
you know, if you gave me a ride, I'd shut up as long as I could.
That'll get you to St. Augusta.
Or to be out of his district.
Come on, Joe.
Oh.
Okay, we can talk after too. So,
Yeah, well, I'll be around.
all right, thank you.
All right, thanks, Jody. With that, I guess we're up to issues by commissioners, as at 6 o'clock we'll be having the truth and budgeting public hearing. So right now, issues by commissioners. Commissioner Lensmeyer.
No, that's just those two and concerns, and that'll do it, so.
And
Thanks a lot.
a possible ride to AMC.
A ride and a calendar, yeah.
Okay. Are you scheduled to stay overnight?
What?
Are you scheduled to stay overnight at AMC?
I think I am. Dr. Willie, you got me a reservation for hotel?
I believe so.
Okay.
Okay, so you just need a ride.
Yeah, well, I was waiting until after the election. Maybe I didn't need you. Now that I'm doomed for another 4 years.
Excited is what
Yeah.
we're talking about. Excited, you're excited for another 4 years. You're not doomed.
Commissioner Morgan?
I attended the 4-H banquet on Sunday, and I was up in Freeport. Very well done,
Yeah, that was. Thanks for reminding me. Yep.
and
I
went
was there
over well.
too.
Great meal.
Yeah, and yeah, it's nice I have fond memories of 4-H, but that was back then, where one of the projects was learning how to hook up an ox cart. So it was a long time ago.
But their computer graphics worked very well, and
Yep,
the kids did an excellent job of presenting.
yep.
Good. Commissioner Persky?
I don't have anything other than, I think we've got some opportunities with the legislature. So if, we can get those ears and maybe see some of the things we have be heard, we can get some work done, so.
Well, there's a lot of new ears down there,
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
probably going to need some education.
yeah.
Commissioner Clark?
Absolutely. Continuing, I guess, with that piece, there is a lot. It'll be great when we get a chance to meet with our delegation. I think we are in a really great place to have a group of people who really want to work with us and push some things, because we're certainly going to need them to. Also, just want to do a shout out to our highway folks, given we got snow today, how important it is with the plowing and everything else. So people be careful.
Yeah, I think we escaped the brunt of that one. It sounds like
Yes,
down by the
we did.
metro. So,
I agree.
I just have one thing maybe to help out extension as well as the Stearns County Soil and Water. There's a soil management summit on December 15th and 16th in St. Cloud at the Park Center in Wade Park. I believe they hold that annually, but it's basically dealing with cover crops, reduced tillage, different things to help preserve the landscape. So I know Chuck Uppa from Soil and Water had mentioned it to me, and I actually got a flyer in the mail, so I thought I would just bring that up. Other than that, we'll probably take a break, and I believe the public hearing starts at 6 o'clock. 6 o'clock. All right, with that, we'll take a break. All right, I'll call the county board meeting back to order. Come back from the break. Our next item is going to be the public hearing to conduct the 2023 Truth in Budgeting public hearing. We are holding this truth in budgeting meeting as required by the state to allow the public to understand and participate in the county budget process. The meeting tonight is only for informational purposes. No decisions will be made. No actions will be taken tonight to set a 2023 county budget or county levy. We will have the administrator and the budget team present an overview of our proposed budget and levy for 2023. Following the presentation, we will welcome comments from the public. Members of the public who are in attendance will have 2 to 3 minutes to comment. Please state your name and address for the record. And the county board will make the final decision on December 13th for the levy for 2023. To provide comments or feedbacks, you can email the budget at co.stearns.mn.us or by calling 320-656-3601. You can also mail it to the Stearns County Administration Center, room 121, 705 Courthouse Square, St. Cloud, Minnesota, 56303. All right, with that, we're ready to go.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
As you said, this presentation is going to be a team effort. We have Randy Schreifels, Steve Hammes, and Sarah Uch, who will be, and myself, we're going to be giving the budget presentation here. The budget committee or budget team is certainly not the only people that put together the budget. I need to take a moment to thank our leadership team, many of them who are behind us, and lots of other staff that helped bring this annual budget together. And of course, thank the board for its leadership and guidance throughout this process. Our mission is there on the screen. Our mission is pretty broad, and I think that's by saying exceptional public services, and that's broad because we provide a multitude of services. And like all counties, we have a lot of duties and responsibility, and I'm going to give you a list of some of them. We construct and maintain public infrastructure and roads. We provide public safety to protect people. We operate 911 systems. We manage and maintain the county jail. We maintain a wealth of public information and historical records. We coordinate elections. We maintain the property tax system. We operate the state's license centers. We provide services for at-risk children and adults. We ensure the public's health. We supervise those released from incarceration. We assist veterans with their benefits. We keep a record of property documents. We maintain county parks and trails. We oversee planning and zoning. And we handle waste collection and recycling and much more than even what I've listed here. And we do that all under that mission of exceptional public services. We also do that with our values in mind. And we keep these values in mind as we pull together the annual budget. And those are professional, approachable, responsive, collaborative, and fair and equitable. And so using all of that, we have pulled together a budget for your consideration. And all those services require a budget of roughly $186 million. It takes quite a few buildings. It takes lots of equipment, and it takes well over 900 employees. And so what you're going to see this evening is an overview of that $186 million budget, about half of which is paid for with the property tax levy. And that is really why we're here tonight, to review the proposed budget and then take public comment, as the board chair has said. But before we take that public comment, again, we want to provide a good description of the budget and the resulting tax levy because of that budget. So in addition to those mission and values, we also have some initiatives, or what I might call guiding principles, as we approached this 2003 budget, and some of those are in front of you there. As always, we want to bring a budget back to the county board that they find is acceptable, and we want to keep the tax rate as low as possible, but in doing that, we also want to have a budget that's sustainable into the future. In this budget, you'll see that we're using CARES funds and ARP funds for a number of items. And it's a pretty, I would say, a fairly heavy usage of fund balance in this budget. As you know, we reviewed fee structure, and this year we did environmental services, which is quite a large percentage of our fees. You took action finally on some of those tonight or this afternoon. We manage the county debt, and as you know, you're going to see a debt levy. The debt portion, the levy of the portion of the levy that's dedicated to debt, we've left higher than we actually need today, and we'll talk about that because of the Jail Justice Center project that we talked about this afternoon. You're also going to see a record amount of road construction plan for 2023 using sales tax revenues, predominantly sales tax revenues, but also wheelage tax. And the update of the capital improvement plan, we've been working on that as we've gone through the budget, and you're going to have a summary of that at your next board meeting. In the area of technology, we're happy, and I think I reported this earlier, that MCIT is going to have cyber coverage for us for next year, but that's not the only thing we care about in cyber coverage or in cybersecurity. There's a lot that goes into that, and we continue with those working to prevent any security issues in our technology. In the broadband area, we're still waiting for the state to come out with its border-to-border grant announcement. We're hoping that that will come out in the next couple of weeks. I'm being told now that it should be in early December. We'll see. But hopefully we'll be successful with those 2 grants we have pending there. In technology improvements, you'll see a lot of expenditures, quite a bit going on in that area within this 2023 and the 2022 budget. And organizationally, you can see this afternoon, we talked about our legislative priorities. We'll continue to work with the state legislator. We'll continue with our efforts to work on community mental health. An example of how we're moving more and more towards, or more and more of those activities is we have our new CAT team for youth, and that's underway now, just beginning. And then we always want to utilize best practices. An example of that in this budget is we have money in there to engage ICMA to look at our dispatch center, much like we had ICMA look at our law enforcement a few years back. So those are sort of some of the guiding principles we use. We also have performance measures so that we know how we're doing, and that's maybe actually 3 parts now. We're involved in the state program where we agree to keep track of a number of performance measures. It's not very many, maybe a dozen, and then we report that back to the state, and we actually get some dollars back because we do that. The second part of that is that we have developed many of our own performance measures and track those over time. And also, we just recently joined the ICMA Center for Performance Measures, which is a program where we enter a number of performance measures into a database that's kept by the International City County Managers Association, and then we're able to be compared to other entities throughout the country. And so we reviewed all of those with you in September, I believe. And again, we use those with our discussions as we pull together the budget. If you just recall back of all the list of the many programs and services that we are responsible for, much of that is mandated. So all of those programs and services that I listed earlier, many of those are mandated, and we calculate that up to 85% of what we do is mandated in some way, shape, or form. Some comes with money, some doesn't come with money. And the next graphic kind of illustrates how that has changed over time. In the 90s, actually, there was a time when county governments were receiving more revenue from state and federal government than they needed to levy. So the red line there is the levy. And you can see now we're to a point where we're funding our programs and services with 50% of a levy, and the state and federal revenues are in the 30%, and that used to be actually almost switched over where it was 50-30 the other way. So we're up against that every year, and you can see that it varies, but that gap is getting a little wider over time. So with that very quick general overview of how we pull this together, and we want to talk more detail about the budget. And so here's the budget overall. You can see it's $186 million, as I said, and a 4.5% increase in expenditures, which is requires a tax levy of just over $91 million. You can see also there that there's a significant use, as I said, significant use of fund balance. Now, a big chunk of that is highway construction, which is actually using sales tax funds that we've accumulated. But the rest of that is pretty much use of fund balance. And then you can also see, and we'll talk about the debt levy as well. Even though we've dropped the expenditures there, we've left the levy at the same, so we can not only generate some fund balance, but keep that levy at a level so that if we do need to increase it for the Jail Justice Center, we're not creating a large spike in the tax rate. So some of the major things we're seeing affect this budget is, of course, personnel costs is always a driver. Personnel costs are more than half of our well over half of our entire budget. Elections is another. Actually, we're coming off a general election year, so those costs are actually going to be going down. And as I said, we have a large year of highway construction here, probably a record year. And then again, use of fund balance is pretty significant, and debt levy I've also sort of mentioned, and we'll get into that a little later too. So a little more detailed budget drivers you can see here. Kind of talked about some of those already, but this gives a little bit of quantify some of these, and we're being subjected, just like everybody is, to the costs of inflation in things like jail food contract and fuel prices and things like that. And then last year we funded projects out of what we call the project fund in the amount of about $5 million. So we don't have that going on this year, but we're still using a significant amount of fund balance again this year.
Hey, Mike, maybe before you go a little further, just for the general public, can you or Randy just kind of say what fund balance, what is the fund balance, and why the county has a fund balance?
Yeah, so fund balance is, assets minus your liabilities. It's that amount you have available, generally we use for cash flow. So the county doesn't get a lot of revenue between January and May 15th. So we're living on fund balance and those excess funds. And so that's what fund balance is and why we need it. So
yeah, with cash flow in, you just wouldn't make sense to go without anything in reserve in case of unforeseen expenditures. And we're actually, I would say, our fund balances are high, particularly because of the ARP funds we've received and the CARES dollars received. Even with what you approved this afternoon, there's still, I want to say, $4 million in each one of those funds, over $4 million in each one of those funds. So when you see us, as we suggested, and talking about that, the action you took this afternoon is not included in these numbers. So some of these numbers are going to change when you see the final budget in December, but it won't change the levy as we talked about.
Dr. Williams?
Commissioner Persky has a question.
Yeah, the fund balance, is it by statute, though it cannot exceed so much, or is it just a recommendation?
No, there's yes, Commissioner Persky, there's just recommendations, and then we have a policy of how much we want, a range of where we want those reserves to be at for each fund. So, we've got a fund for park, you've got a general fund. General fund is typically the largest, and then human services fund, those are kept separate, and highway fund kept separate.
So yeah, we're within that range that's recommended by the state auditor and our policy. But part of the fund balance is these ARP funds that we got, and we have a number of years to spend those, but they do show up in our fund balance. So it makes us look like we have a higher fund balance right now, but we have plans to spend a lot of that, like broadband. That'll be a big expenditure.
So just another way to look at the budget, kind of where the money goes. The general fund, there's 36%, human services 33%. And if you look at the highway together there, well, I didn't add up the percentages, but you got 2 percentages, both construction and road and bridge. So those three are the major. That general fund would be mostly public safety, probably 55 to 60% of that would be into our public safety and criminal justice system. So with that quick broad overview, I think we're going to hand it over to Mr. Hammes.
All right. Good evening, Commissioners. Steve Hammes, Assistant Administrator. So I'm going to go a little bit into a deeper dive on some of the line items. So looking at the expenditure breakdown by general categories, again, you can see the total budget's going from 178.5, just shy of 0.6 million to 186.6 million, 4.2% increase. You can see that personnel is going up 4.36%. Capital outlay, again, because of that $5 million we took out of the project fund last year, capital outlay expenditures for 2023 are going down by about $5 million. So personnel increases and capital outlay spending are pretty much washes each other out. Services are where the bulk of the budget is growing. That's that 12.37%. And that's the part of the budget where all of our contracts for services lies. So all of the human services contracts for services, all of the contracts for highway construction are in that part of the budget. All the contracts for IT equipment are in that part of the budget. And so that's the area that's growing the most significantly. The supply budget, again, is holding steady and just going down by about $30,000. When we look at major technology spending, we see that, again, as I talked about when we did the preliminary budget, this is a continuation from 2022's projects. These are large technology projects that take more than 1 year to complete. One of them is the most expensive one is the technology system that runs the entire sheriff's department, everything from dispatch, jail, patrol, to the technology that's in the squad cars of all of our squads, as well as the interface with all the PDs across the county. It's a massive undertaking. It's going to take probably another 18 months to get that one complete. Total project estimated cost is about $2.5 million at this time. I'm going to say, again, the technology market being what it is, those project costs could go up. The next one is a new HR payroll system. Our system, again, is over 20 years old and has outlived its useful life expectancy. The vendor has told us we need to get off the platform. They won't support it any longer, and we either need to find a new vendor or upgrade to the current vendor's new platform. The cost is going to be the same either way. And again, that's over $1 million. We are switching our phone system over to be a Teams-based system. So we'll be going, that's a voice over internet platform, and that'll be $800,000. And then the property tax and CAMA system is a system that we share with most of the counties in the state through the MCCC, that's the Minnesota County Computer Cooperative, and Stearns County's share of that system upgrade is $500,000. Talking about technology, and I used this slide when we did the preliminary budget too. One of the things about technology that's frustrating to a lot of people and is frustrating for governments and agencies across the country is the fact that how technology is purchased has changed. The upfront costs used to be the bulk of the costs. As technology has changed, the companies have really changed the dynamics, and so they have lower upfront costs in terms of purchase price, installation, and the first year of coverage, and they really have increased how the service agreements to continue to use the software, the ability to keep that piece of software running, goes on for years 2, 3, 4, 5, and however long you're using that software. And for Stearns County, that line item has gone up 45% in just the last 5 years. And I don't see that trend slowing down anytime soon. That's just the way that the industry works, and there's not much of anything the county can do about it. So again, just as something that the board needs to understand and recognize, and again, to be able to tell the public that this is a cost that can't be escaped. Again, as Mike has talked about, one of the largest areas of growth in the budget for next year is going to be road construction. In 2023, we're going to be looking at a road construction program of $32.8 million, which is the highest that we've done in at least the last 25 years. As you can see, the county levy portion of that is $2.3 million. The bulk of those money is coming from state, federal, and sales tax funds that aren't coming from the levy. The county does fund a number of outside agencies, either by statutory obligation or by joint powers agreements or by statutory allowance to be able to support agencies that have local incentives or interests. This is a listing of those agencies that the county has paid money to in the past and are continuing for 2023. As you can see, the total cost that we're recommending for approval is just about $150,000 for next year. The bulk of that increase is going to be in the regional library, which again is a joint powers board. Stearns County doesn't have a say in what our allocation is. We are required to pay whatever the joint powers board has set as their funding budget. That's not necessarily the case for most of the rest of those on there, where again, be it the Ag Society or the Historical Society, we're just a contributor to their overall budget. And then just as a reminder of where we've been, since the budget process started, the process starts again back as early as March in Human Services and end of April for all the other departments. So it's something that is worked on almost continually throughout the year. If we look at the total request of what departments asked for at the beginning of the process, we were looking at a 12.6% increase in spending, not a 4.5% increase. And so again, the Budget Committee working with departments has really taken a lot of time and effort to get that number down and cut over $7 million from the initial request that came in. As you see, there were requests for 18 personnel from across the departments, and we've declined most of those. We've also cut some of our line items, such as boarding prisoners to other jurisdictions, transporting prisoners to other jurisdictions where we think that's a safe bet. It's again not a guarantee, as you heard this afternoon in the workshop. You know, we're subject to whatever happens and whatever the pressures are in the jail. Those numbers might not be as stable as we're estimating. We are using $500,000 of Human Services fund balance to cover operational costs in Human Services for next year. That's something we haven't really done before, but we needed to make the numbers fit, and so we're going to try that based on the funds balance levels we have, as Randy and Mike talked about. And we have moved a number of capital items from levy funding to being funded by either CARES, ARPA, or other fund balance sources. So since the budget has been presented to the board back in September, and these are the actions that you took this afternoon. These, so for the public that may not have been watching this afternoon or were in attendance at the meeting at the time, there were a number of things that have come to the Budget Committee's attention in the last several weeks that would have put a wrench into the budget numbers. And so again, the board took action this afternoon to cover these items with the use of, again, additional fund balance dollars or moving the money around inside the budget. So this will not cause an increase in the levy. The budget numbers that we bring back on the 13th will account for all of these changes, but again, the levy will be set where it is. These include some matches that are required for some grants that Parks has received for both Quarry and Kramer Lake Parks. The state announced that they were cutting funding for highways from what they had projected they were going to be giving us, and so that was about $500,000 there that we needed to plug that hole. Again, the sheriff requested a mobile command center. That's about a $400,000 item. The county is in a 50-year lease agreement with the Central Minnesota Mental Health Clinic, and that building was mostly paid for by a state grant, but there were some cost overruns due to state regulations and the fact that there were some contaminated soils on the site, and so that caused cost overruns of over $300,000. The health insurance fund during the COVID period, the health insurance fund took a bit of a hit from the number of claims that came in and the fact that, again, health insurance funds for health insurance companies, the tests and all of those other things that were free weren't free. The health insurance companies passed them back to self-funded programs like ourselves, and so our health insurance fund took quite a hit, so we needed to replenish that reserve. And again, the veteran service study on staffing came in a few weeks ago, and again, by using some money, we can implement those recommendations for 2023. Mike talked about debt service, and again, how the county has been trying to keep debt service levy steady so that we don't have a huge shock. But again, you want to have is a levy that stays as stable as possible, so there's as little movement up or down in a given year, so that it's predictable for you as a board and how to operate the organization, and it's predictable as best it can be for taxpayers, so they hopefully don't get too big a shock from one year to the next. So the orange line there is looking at the debt service levy as we're projecting it over the past several years, that the amount has stayed between just over $4 million to just over $3 million over the last decade, as that's been where the board has set that over time. The blue line shows the amount of debt payments that we've made each year. We have, of course, several bonds that we've had for capital projects over the last several years. Many of those are falling off. Again, I believe by 2031, all of our debt will be paid off? Okay. But we're going to be down to one bond payment left as of after this year. So following this year, we'll only have one bond left. That's a smaller bond on some of our last projects that we've completed in the last 2 years. So you can see how the amount that we've needed to levy, that blue line, has started to drop after 2021 based on the actual needs. But again, as you see, there's a spike after 2023. Again, the board held a workshop this afternoon to discuss the needs and the different options available for a new justice center, which could have significant increases to both the debt service levy as well as the number of bonds that the county will need to issue, depending on the decisions that the board will have to make in the next few months. So to try to keep the debt service from creating a huge shock where we have to raise the debt service levy by double digits, we've been trying to keep the debt service levy stable to mitigate how much of the increase we have to have in the future.
Well, Steve, just so people don't get too excited about that blue line, you know, we talked about using sales tax, which other counties have been able to do. And if we did a certain amount of sales tax, we would not even have any property tax levy dedicated to that debt. So we ran a couple scenarios for the board this afternoon, and even with those high costs of that new jail justice center, if we choose to do that, if we do it with sales tax, we can keep the property tax levy out of it.
That is correct, and I hope I didn't scare people too much, but again, it's something that we've been trying to watch for years and try to mitigate against until the board has the ability to make their decisions on what options to go forward with. So again, we've talked about use of fund balance, and so here's a breakdown of the fund balance that we're planning to use for 2023. Again, it's about $10.5 million in fund balance that we'll be using. We're going to use part of it for our building fund, part of it to buy a new truck for our facility department. We've been in the middle of a turnover of our radio system for the sheriff's office. The board approved purchasing some of these in the spring. We still have another set to go. And radios for the sheriff's department are very spendy. And so that's going to cost us yet another $250,000 to try to complete that in 2023. I mentioned the human services operations. You can see there's some parks items, but again, the big ticket item is, again, using about $8 to $9 million of that for highway spending that we'll be doing in 2023.
And Steve, that's money that's already been collected through those items.
Correct.
Sales tax wheelage.
Yeah. So again, for fund balances, as Randy indicated, our fund balances are a little high right now because of the influx we received for CARES and ARPA. And again, the board has already allocated a bunch of the money for ARPA to the broadband program. And so that money is sitting in here. And so that's, again, why it looks higher than normal. So you can see that based on what we have currently and what our budget expenses are for 2022, we're sitting at a 48% percent of our fund balance to budget, which is within the 35 to 50% that the state recommends. So again, being able to then use 10 million of that will keep us within the range that the state wants us to be in, but it will allow us to, again, buy down the levy from where it otherwise would have been if we had not taken this action. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sarah.
Oh, there you go. All right, good evening, Commissioners. Sarah Utsch, Finance Director here at the county. A little piece on the fund balance that he had talked about. I just want to also mention that when you do levy for debt service, it stays restricted for debt service. So as we showed that previous, I got to go backwards just for a second. As we showed this previous graph, where the blue line is below the orange line, that incremental amount that we've been collecting in levy dollars stays restricted for debt. So the county can't repurpose that to do something else. It must, by statute, stay for future debt. And so that's kind of what we were talking about, the Justice Center or whatever may come up. All right, a few statistics have been put together just to see how Stearns County compares to other counties within the state. It's always good as we're all kind of the only ones in the business are the 87 of us counties within the state of Minnesota. And so the first one up there is showing you that out of 87 counties, we are 83rd, which is good, of our total expenditures per capita. So you take the total expenses that the county incurs and divide that by our population. And of course you want to be low. That's showing good stewardship, that we are on the lower end of the 87 counties for spending for our population size. The same is our revenues. And this is one where you would like to be a little higher, or lower in the number. You would like to have more revenue per capita. So this is showing all of our state grants, our county program aid, anything that we are getting in, highway user tax, different things that we gather from the state and federal. And we are 78 out of 87 for that measure. Levy comparison, the top one there is showing our tax levy rate, which Randy will go into and will show graphically in a little bit. And the bottom one is our net property tax levy per capita. Again, out of 87 counties, if you take our property tax levy passed on to our residents and divide that by our population, we are 78 out of 87, meaning we are on the low end of the levy per capita compared to others. We slice it a different way. We talk about levy increases. Our proposed levy increase right now is 4.33%. If we look at our MICA counties, which is an organization we belong to, our comparison counties, those that are like us either geographically or in population, and then our neighboring counties, you can see the averages there, and you can see again how Stearns County compares at the 4.3% that's being proposed. This shows the same metrics, but this is by size because, of course, smaller counties and larger counties have different hills to climb. And so we are one of the larger counties per this metric with a levy size of over 60 million. And it shows that, our property tax increase of 4.3% is pretty close to that average of 4.24 for counties of that size. Everybody's property tax statement has different jurisdictions that are imposing a tax: county, city, town, depending on where you live, school district, and special taxing district. So this is showing the average statewide, not just in Stearns County, statewide on which each of those jurisdictions are doing. So you can see the cities on average in the state have the highest change in the levy in this upcoming year. I put this slide together, I think, last year for the first time, just to kind of talk about how decisions we make today impact the future. So, of course, you keep levy increase low in 1 year, and at some point it could catch up with you, depending on what decisions you're making on how to fund different things. And so if you look at Stearns County down the column, you can see somewhat steady, if you will. But when you have a lower year, usually a year or two later, you're catching up by having a higher amount. The ones in Wright County that are rather large in 2019 and 2018, those would be the years that they started paying their debt on their new facility, their new jail and their new government center. When they started paying debt on those is when they had to hike the property tax levy up without sales tax. And Benton, I didn't have as many years to show on that as it wasn't available. So with that, I'll turn it over to Randy to talk about the property tax piece.
So the first slide is on the county tax rate. And as you see, as it goes to the right, it is going down, and it went down this year 11%. So what that means is the levy that we set is lower than the increase in market value and tax capacity. So the market value in the county went up on average about 15%, and our levy went up 4.3%, so then our tax rate goes down. So, the next one just shows where the property tax levy goes of $91 million. Most of it goes to the general fund, 47%, and that's where most of the departments are. So that's where sheriff, environmental services, auditor, admin, and emergency management and property services all are in there. So the next one is showing the increase in our base. So this is new construction, and the market value on that second line of new construction was $254 million. That's a little bit higher than we've seen probably in prior years, but within a range. And the tax on that new construction was $1.3 million. And then our total levy is going to be the 3.7 that we're proposing. So 36% of that levy is coming from that new construction. This next one is showing the change in the tax base also. So this is a growth in market value. And you can see the residential homestead and the non-homestead and then the seasonal rec down a little lower. Those are all over the 20%. So that's what we're seeing this year is the residential properties are seeing a big growth in market value. Not only does that hit them, that also causes a shift. So the commercial industrial, for instance, some of those are actually going down because there's so much increase in the other area. So it's causing a shift. And this is one thing we mentioned to our legislature for them to look at. And we proposed, let's make some changes to help alleviate this, such as changing, some of the homestead exclusion. Certainly the county program aid would have helped. And none of that got done. That was in the tax bill, but that all would have helped here. So taxes countywide, this is by jurisdiction. So the top line is the city tax. And as Sarah mentioned, statewide, cities had the highest tax. And we see in Stearns County, they're also the highest there. They watch the tax rate a little more carefully. So they're taking that increase in tax rate and then I think helping pay for their expenditures. The county is at the 4.3 and then countywide it's at 6.46% increase. So, and this is last year. I won't spend much time, but that was at 3.8%. So we'll see this year went up a bunch. So this next one is to show what the levy increase does on various property types. And this is assuming a 0% market value increase. So this is not reflecting what people are going to see, but this is to show the effect of the tax rate. So the tax rate went down 11%. If you didn't have any increase in your values, your taxes would go down 11%. So just to show the importance of the tax rate. So this next slide is on average what we're seeing out in the county. So this is what the 4.3% levy increase and then what every property type market value changed. So for residential homestead, it was 21% increased in value. And then their taxes went up anywhere from 9% to 17%. And then you see the ag and the commercial industrial actually went down on average. And that's that tax shift I talked about, is the residential went up so much that they actually are paying a bigger chunk of that tax. So, and this is one area where also, any of those legislative changes we would have talked about would have helped alleviate some of this.
So Randy, just for clarification, this shows if 10 residential homes are up for sale and they each average, their estimated market value last year was $100,000, and then everybody that wanted to buy one said, we'll give you $120,000. That increase, that's how that market value jumps up because people were paying more than what
so you're right. The assessors look at sales, actual sales, when they're adjusting market values, and that's what their sales ratios were showing. So, we'll see where it goes next year. Hopefully it topped out now. And I guess if you're selling your home, that's good news. If you're paying tax on it, it's not so good, right? So this next slide is showing the average increase in value with no increase in levy. So if we did a 0% levy increase, residential homestead on a $100,000 house would go up 12%, where in the previous slide it was up 17%. So you'd save that 5% in effect. So, and this one is just kind of further showing just different properties with that same scenario. This last slide is showing, talking a little bit about the homestead market value exclusion. So what the homestead market value exclusion is on a $76,000 property that's homesteaded, 30,000 of that will be excluded from tax. So that will come right off your value, and we'll calculate tax at that lower amount. As your value goes up, you lose that homestead market value exclusion. So when your taxes or when your value is going up, not only are you paying more tax because your value went up, but you're also paying more tax because you're losing that homestead exclusion. And that homestead exclusion hasn't been adjusted now for over 10 years. So it's one of those areas that, you know, we really need to encourage the legislature to examine and to make some changes, because it's not keeping up with where values are going. So this slide in the third and fourth column is showing the increase due to market and the increase due to homestead exclusion. And the third one then is showing the decrease because of the tax rate. So putting all those three together, you come up with your change in your value. So, and with that, I'll turn it over to Mike.
All right, thanks. We'll wrap it up here with just a few thoughts about where this budget will leave us when we look ahead to future budgets. And we say it's balanced and sustainable into future years, but then you can see the third bullet that says, you know, we need to be careful with how much fund balance we use, because obviously you can't do that kind of thing forever. We are experiencing, as you all know, troubles in filling positions, particularly in the jail. We've talked about the debt service and how, you know, whether or not we will use property tax to pay any or part of that project if it comes to fruition. And then we always want to say that we never really know how the state and federal governments are going to treat us. Things can change as quickly as we don't want them to. And then, as Steve suggested in the one slide there, we do have increasing costs in technology that just seem to be going as we use more and more technology, of course, for efficiencies, but there's a price tag to that. The last note is just to show you where we are in the process and show the public where we are in the process. We start this way back in April, and we're down to the public hearing tonight, and then the board will presumably take action to set the budget and the levy on December 13th during their regular board meeting. And the quick summary of the budget then, as you've heard, expenditures are up 4.5%. The levy will be up 4.3%. Our tax capacity is up over 17%. And so put those all together, and the tax rate actually drops 11%. And then of note is that we are using a significant amount of fund balance. And you've actually today approved some more use of fund balance that will increase that number a little bit. But again, remember that some of that was sales tax collected. Absolutely, a big chunk of that is sales tax collected for the purpose of road construction. So with that, we will conclude our presentation, Mr. Chair, and you can open the public hearing unless the board has some questions before that.
So, Mike, we received these comments. Do they need to be read at all into?
I don't think they need to be read, Mr. Chair. I think as long as we acknowledge that you have them and we can enter them into the record, I don't think they need to be read.
I believe everybody should have a set of them. So with that, I guess we can open this up for public comment, as this is a public hearing. So anyone wishing to speak, please step up to the microphone, state your name and address. Usually we allocate 2 to 3 minutes per individual. So if you would please state your name and address.
John Palmer, 832 Halliday Road. I'm going to give a macro view of this. I can listen to all of the talk, but the macro view is for the last few years, my property tax continues to go up in an unsustainable way. And you need to take that into consideration. Because the only way that I can escape this escalating cost of property tax is to leave the county. I'm not saying I'm going to leave the county, but you create an incentive for me to leave the county, leave the state for that matter, based on how I get taxed. I get no benefit when my property goes up in value unless I sell it. It's the only way I get any benefit from that. I get the negative. You also need to consider the impact that the city and the school district have on people that live in this county. Because my property tax may go up. The good news is it's only going up 11% for the county. Only 11, compared to the city at 25.7% up, the school district at 12% up, and the other taxing districts 17% up. Now, my income doesn't go up that rapidly. I'm retired. My pension is capped at 2% growth a year. Even with the Social Security increase that's happening, it doesn't even cover this. It doesn't cover it. So what this means is I will have to pull out of funds that were saved for a rainy day to pay. Something is not quite in alignment when you have this differential based on the number that's tied to the assessment of property tax value. My wife said at dinner tonight, if I asked her, should I come? I'm here because she said yes. But what she said is, what are they going to do, tax all the senior citizens out of their homes? I remember that discussion when I wasn't a senior citizen. And we did at one time provide some relief to senior citizens in this state so that they wouldn't be faced with being taxed out of their homes. And as I said, I give you a macro point of view of what this is. And clearly, from what you've presented, you're doing better than some of the other taxing entities that get into my wallet. So thank you for listening. Thanks for your service, and good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John.
Father Richard Voigt, 22270 43rd Avenue in St. Augusta. A little story. There was a man by the name of Rehoboam, and Rehoboam was placed in position to become the next king after Solomon. And when he was established as the king to be, the people came to him and said, "Your father has taxed us to death. Please give us some relief." He went to the elders, and the elders said, "If you will give them relief, they will be happy and they will serve you." He then went to his buddies, the young men, and said, "What should I do?" They said, "Give it to them harder and harder, and you'll get them under your nails and you'll be able to crush them." What one did he choose? And he lost the kingdom. He lost the kingdom because he sat there and wanted to put more and more pressure upon the middle class. And that's what's happening worldwide. Get rid of the middle class, and you've got them under your control. They become enslaved. And this is what we're dealing with all around our country. I've gone all through different states, and I see it over and over again, this communist mentality. And it doesn't just come out through finances, it comes out in the politics. The last election, as you know and I know, even right now, they're deciding the results in Arizona. Fraudulent. So many things that have been corrupted. And so we're here in order to speak up and say we must resist this movement, because in the end, your children and our families will be destroyed, because that's the way communism has to move. And it has been going through our nation for over, Alger Hisson Company, over 70 years for sure. So I'm asking you to think, how do we help the citizens? Certainly you're doing a great job of balancing the budget and so forth, but certainly property taxes, you know, as the good man just said, I get the same thing. My property gets evaluated at $200,000 all of a sudden. And then your tax rate goes up and you sit there and go, oh my God, what happened here from last year to this year? So certainly we react to that, and we hope and pray that you'll have hearts that will make a decision that, you know, looks at this budget and says, maybe we can do some more cutting. I've played with math all my life, and I know the numbers can be manipulated. Maybe we can do a little manipulation and bring our numbers down, and then we will be a, what? A sanctuary city for those who want to get out of being taxed. So thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Colleen Donovan, 324 9th Avenue North, St. Cloud. I have, for the first time, kind of looked at your budgets, and when I reviewed it, I have some questions, mainly because I think the government should be run like a business, like the rest of us run a business, not where it's free for all, where you just keep taxing and taxing until you got people broke. So, I mean, I take a look at your human service budget. Where does all that money go? What's it dealt out to? Does anybody know?
The biggest chunk of it, of that, Colleen, is grandma and grandpa in the nursing home. It's remarkable how high that percentage is. The rest of it goes to the various programs that have much more visibility than that, but that's the biggest piece.
So is there a way to get a copy of the budget out of that department to see where the money is being spent? I mean, is it into the nursing, which when it comes to the elderly, I'm all for it. I mean, I will tell you guys right now, with what the elderly, between getting taxed by the state on their Social Security and what their Social Security income is, if they hadn't, from watching my mother, if she hadn't saved money, there's no way her monthly bills that she'd have enough from her, just the Social Security to pay for it. And we're putting our elderly people out, and we shouldn't be doing that. They paved the way for us to be here to begin with. But, so is there a way to get the breakdown on the human service?
There is. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, it should all be public information. Correct?
Absolutely. Yep.
And who can I go get it from? Okay. You know, the other thing I want to tell you is, you've talked about market value increase. You know what, that was when interest rates were 1% and 2%, and they're not that at the bank anymore. So they are going to come down. Housing sales have slowed down because of the cost of interest. So nothing has really come around yet. And so to me you got to find a way to cut this budget. Just like the rest of the businesses and people have had to cut their budget, and people at home with working families have cut their budgets. Between the gas, the food prices, and now you want to, you got to take a deduction. You got to dig some more and find somewhere to cut this budget. That's what I wanted to tell you. Thank you.
Yeah, see you, Colleen.
Is there anyone else here wishing to speak?
Good evening, everybody. James Louis, 1305 10th Avenue. I'm here to ask the board to take a look at different ways to reduce the taxes overall. And one of the areas that I think there is an opportunity is the homestead exclusion. Like the gentleman mentioned earlier, that hasn't been looked at in many years. And as we looked at the market overall, just demand for home prices or homes overall have significantly skyrocketed their values overall. So I really do ask the board to take a look at that, not just that, but some of the other areas that expenses have continued to increase to really help us. Because at the macro level, yes, I can look at 4% and say, yeah, 4% is not that high. But the impact at the micro level for folks like me, others in my community, the average of between 20-ish and 26% or more tax increases are really starting to hit us really hard. So I do recommend that not only look at ways that you could look at getting some additional funding from other agencies or entities, but also how to help us at the micro level to really be able to continue, because we're taking cuts. And I can't go to my employer and say, hey, listen, I need a 40% increase, because guess what? The federal government's going to take their cut. The state's going to take their cut. And I need some to pay the county, and not just that, but the city as well. So that is the comment that I have to make this afternoon. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Randy, with that homestead credit, were we not supposed to get an improvement on that with this tax bill?
Yeah, it was in the tax bill that didn't get passed at the end. So, right. And the other part that people should be looking at is there's a property tax refund. So as your tax has gone up, you probably qualify for that. And it is something, although I doubt the legislature can help the counties out now anymore, but they may be able to put money into that program in this next session, right? So,
would there not have also been a correction for more allocations? If that tax bill would have passed, we would have been down probably about another % on the taxes?
Yeah.
Percent and a half.
Yeah. County program aid we would have had about $1 million swing in county program aid, which is more than 1% on our final.
Mr. Chair, I know we're not supposed to necessarily directly be responding, but I think it is helpful to know that we don't have any control over the homestead credit. We are lobbying vociferously, though. We think that program needs to be updated, that there are a number of other items that have been in there that we will continue to be lobbying for. And at some point, for some seniors, there is an opportunity to defer property taxes, but that's probably not the best time to be talking about that right this second. But
yeah, so the county program aid that we get actually went down for next year. In the tax bill, it would have went up. So that was a swing that would have been at least a % difference in our levy if that would have happened.
Oh, and Mr. Chair, just really quickly too, sorry. It's just, since almost everything we do is mandated, we also try really hard to get the state and the feds not to keep putting more mandates on us, but we are told what we have to do, and we don't actually have a choice about that.
And Stearns County also belongs to the Association of Minnesota Counties. And that's, who we use to try and help us get the state legislature to do some of these, like increase homestead exclusions and stuff like that. But, obviously, we need help with lobbying that. And, the more voices they hear, hopefully, they take action. But is there anyone else here wishing to speak tonight? Anyone else?
Irene Callahan, 6 Allendale Drive, St. Cloud, Minnesota. I just, actually, one thing I wanted to comment on was for the highway fund, my husband and I drive around Stearns County quite a bit. We just go out for rides, and we've noticed that a lot of the county roads are being updated and repaired, which is like, we think, wow, there's, funding out there for wherever it comes from. So we appreciate that. And then just a question, I know maybe you can't answer if you're not supposed to respond, but there's a road, county road that goes from St. Stephen just on the east side of Leggett's Garage, from St. Stephen in down to that county road, which is a nightmare. And that one, I looked too, I didn't see if it was going to be on for 2023. but it is, so it's almost dangerous because it's so narrow. It doesn't take much and you would be ending up in the ditch. So if somebody could put that on the
Irene, if you
list, that'd be
stick
good.
around, I'll tell you the story about that road.
Oh,
It's a pretty
okay.
long story
Good.
on that
Yeah.
one.
Okay.
Okay.
Because of all the
I'll
roads in
talk
the
to you about
county, I
that
think
road.
that's number one on the, should be
In
number
my
one on the
heart,
list.
too. Okay.
Okay.
We'll
So-
talk about it.
Sure, great. But like I said, that part of the budget, I can see improvements and spending of money, so we appreciate that.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak tonight? Again, anyone else wishing to speak?
I would make a comment about highway spending. It's a contradiction, but we spend a fair amount of money on highways with low traffic counts. And the reason for that seems to be ridiculous on its surface, but the reason for that is a lot of those highways are in the west 2/3 of Stearns County, and they're farm-to-market roads. And the loads that come off of the ever-expanding agricultural operations in that area need to be built to specs that can handle those loads. So while the traffic counts are down, the total loads are actually heavier. So you will find some seeming inconsistencies in highway spending, but once you appreciate the difference in what they're dealing with, it starts to make more sense. And there's those types of things they're in various places in our budget, but at first it seems incongruous that this happening, but there's always a reason why that takes place.
And in reality, to add on to that comment, Stearns County actually still has county gravel roads yet.
Yeah.
In the western part of the county.
950 miles of county road.
Anyone else want to make a comment? So please step up to the microphone.
Ken Thielen at 3020 19th Street South. And I hesitated to come up here and speak. And don't take this wrong way. I think it's a waste of time talking to this setting just because we were in council with one of the assessors. And being in the city of St. Cloud, he said you really have to talk to a city assessor to really try and appeal anything in the future as it comes up with the next proposal. But I just, for some information to you in the group that you maybe know or don't know, between the economy and what's happening with the increase, my property went up 20.8%, which is, I think, a little $800-900, which is starting to raise an eyebrow. And based on the perfect storm that the economy is having right now, I think that's where it's hitting everybody harder. And as we all get a little older, and I'm still working, we're sort of semi-retired, but based on the investment market that has somewhat subsided, and then as you drive around town, it costs you more. As you go into Costco, Walmart, cash-wise, you see it in the wallet, what it costs you for that product. And then to get hit with an increase of this amount in our property tax really starts to bite. The assessor we talked to said we should talk to City of St. Cloud, which we live. And I'm just going to throw out a couple of facts here. And he brought up something that I figured, I know the reason for the increase because we've had a premium real estate market for about the last 36 months. And when you have interest rates at 2.5%, and now you have interest rates at 7%, those comps that the city and the county see is based on, I think he told me, 2021 transactions. So he actually indicated that probably next year we're going to see an increase of over 15% again on the real estate. So I don't know how accurate that was, but what we're going to see though abruptly is we're going to see somewhat of a crash in the real estate market. And I'm not a pessimist, I'm an optimist, but when you have rates from 2.5% to 7+%, that piece of property is not going to sit at that value anymore. I know my house would not sell. It would probably sell for $50,000 to $100,000, maybe less than it did, let's say, 12 months ago. And now there's a major correction, but they're basing all that on the comparables and the sales. I know my real estate went up according to the past sold market, but if we're going to base that on next year for another increase of 15+% based on the comps of most of 2022, that's going to be way out of line. That's going to really hurt. That's going to really hurt. Just right now, year to date, and I just picked Stearns County, just some different cities. And I know there's other factors in there with low inventory and that, but we're going to see this drastically fall. Cold Spring is down year to date in home closed sales 20+%. Sartell is down 30.9% in closed transactions year to date from a year ago. St. Cloud is down 22%. St. Joe is down 32.7%. And this fall is happening quicker than what the county and the city is basing their values on. And I think there has to be some consideration there that when you guys get together and whoever you have to talk to, that when you get homestead families, you want to homestead properly. You don't want rentals because they're just not maintained the same way. And if it forces people, I know I have a sister that lives over by Bethlehem Lutheran. She's on a very tight budget. She's a young 87. And she called me the other day and her property taxes went up almost $1,000 for this coming year. That's a lot of money for people like that. So, like I say, there's not much you can do. This is more of a city appeal, but I just wanted to give that information.
Thank you.
Part of the explanation on that, I can help you with a little bit.
Yep.
Yes, everything you cited is correct, with the understanding, however, that for the data that our assessors work with, the data that our taxation system works with is a year old.
Yes.
So what you cited is correct, except it's from the data from a year ago. Next year, it'll be on the data you just cited in terms of current market value. And people find that confusing. But to adjust the system that quickly has proven to be pretty challenging, so we don't even try. We adjust and catch up over, say, a multi-year period, but to do it in 1 year, we haven't figured out a good scheme for that yet.
No, and I understand that. One question, though, that I'll throw out to the board is, in, let's say, 24 months, when the real estate values have considerably adjusted, will the real estate tax adjust, let's say, 15 to 20%? I don't think so. Because, well, and this, I guess, isn't going to base any facts. I was paying in 2021 a little under $3,000, $2,992. Last year was $3,100 and change. This year it went up to $3,780. And that's a big increase.
Oh, it's a chunk.
Yeah, that is a chunk. And like I said, it's the perfect storm because everything else to heat our houses, we all get that XL Energy or that Stearns Co-op bill. We know what it costs
to drive your car, buy your food, heat your house, and now the taxes. So it was just tough timing here.
Yeah, the sales volumes definitely will be down. They're going down as we speak. And over the long run, I'm a recovering real estate appraiser. I did that for 30-some years.
Yeah.
Interest rates and property values move in opposite directions. So interest rates go up, property values typically go down. So the part that you cited that I absolutely agree with is the volume of sales going down. Now, what the difference would be is in our perception, having been in the industry that long, I'd call that a market adjustment. You being a homeowner, call that a crash, but we're looking at the same thing.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad you made it.
And unfortunately, it's a lag effect.
Yes, that's right.
Because it'll
That's what I
lag the
was
other way
trying to get
too.
to.
When it's low, it
Yeah.
can always lag on the other way. Yeah, it's unfortunate. Anyone else here wishing to speak tonight? Again, anyone else? One more time. Anyone else wishing to speak? Otherwise, we will close the, Commissioner
Yeah,
Huntsmeyer?
the lag effect you spoke of, Steve, our staff has been positioning our budget situation for some time because we're aware from the data from our people in our criminal justice system, be it the county attorney or the sheriff, or the people at, for example, judges, probation, all of that, that there are significant pressures on our existing criminal justice system necessitating significant jail increase. So some of the improved metrics, whether you appreciated them or not, in our budget situation was in preparation for that. Exactly when the timing on that will hit, we're not aware, but you'll be seeing more and more information on where we're at on the planning and process going forward. So to the extent possible, while it was fun to complain about Randy and the auditor treasurer's office during the last election cycle, between his staff and our county administrator's staff, we're preparing ourselves for that eventuality, because it just wasn't hard to see that this was coming down the pipe. We tend to think of places like Apollo High School as our new high school. Well, we tend to think of our jail as our new jail. Well, it's 35 years old. And also the features that go into new construction are different than back when that was built. So there's some, at least on the county side, and I'm not responsible or aware, I don't follow as closely as I should, school district and city stuff, but on the county side, we are in a situation where we have to take action on that fairly soon. So stay tuned. We've got a website that does a decent job of chronicling that. Maybe there's another way to get that information out in more detail. But yeah, without a doubt, we got some near-term adventures on our hands in terms of our budget challenges.
All right. Staff, any more comments or
Just can't pass up the opportunity to give people pleasing news.
I noticed. All right, with that, we will close the public hearing. And being that was the last item on our agenda, I guess at this point, we can adjourn the meeting. All right, thank you.